Okay.
Ready? Ready. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Madison Fire District Reorganizational Meeting, January 19th, 2022, at 6:58 PM. Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Gauntner.
He's out for tonight. He has another
He's
commitment.
gonna be in Pennsylvania.
Mr. Lee.
Here?
Mr. Donaldson.
Here.
Mr. Wayman.
Here.
Okay, we move into the nominations. Need a nomination for chairman.
I make that motion for Mr. Lee.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Gauntner. Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman, Chairman. Former Chairman. I'd like to ask for nominations for Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Max Anderson for Vice Chair. I didn't,
Okay.
Second.
Any other nominations? Okay. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
yes.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Okay, we have a new chairman and vice chairman. Motion for our regular fire board meeting schedule, to approve that schedule. Go ahead.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I believe they're, what, the third Wednesday of
Yes,
the month?
at 7 o'clock.
Right. Anything else regarding the meeting schedule?
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Donaldson? No, any discussion? Sorry. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Gauntner. Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to establish the 11 holidays for the fire district.
Yeah, that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Yep.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Wayman. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna go into the next two motions, and I'm gonna just, because some have to do with personnel matters, also there are things regarding salaries. I don't know if there is any need to go into executive session for either of these two motions. Is there, Ms. Dane, if someone wants to go into executive session to discuss some of these, is that appropriate?
I mean, if, it depends on what you're going
Right.
in to discuss. If you're discussing an employee or an employee's compensation, then yes, you can
Yeah.
go into executive session. If it's for any other matter, then it should be just discussion in the
Okay.
public meeting.
Well, I'll ask the question again. Is anyone desirous of going into executive session to either discussing personnel issues as it relates to the two motions in front of us, or anything having to do with compensation? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to continue in effect at the current status the following. Establishment of a records committee, establish an audit committee, a full-time labor management should we be doing this individually then?
Yes.
These particular items, you have to have discussion and appoint those members to the board, especially
Okay.
for the full-time labor management, part-time labor management, and
Right.
these items.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is a records committee. If I might ask, who is on that at this point in time?
It's the chairman, the vice chairman, the fire chief, the fiscal officer, and the district administrative assistant.
Okay. So if there's not any need to change that, I'll entertain a motion to establish a records committee
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Miss-
second
okay.
it.
The same members?
with the same members, yes. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Max and Jay. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes. Okay. Establish the audit committee.
I was on it, I'll do it again.
Okay, who else was on it, if I may ask?
That is the chairperson, the vice chairperson, the fiscal officer, legal, and it says a bank professional as requested.
Okay, Mr. Anderson is asked to be on this committee, so I will allow him to be on in my place.
No, he's on as vice chair.
Oh,
Did you say vice chair?
oh, okay, sorry.
Chair and vice chair, correct?
Chair and vice chair. Okay, any others? None of us, just the fire chief and the fiscal?
It's the chairman, the vice chairman, the fiscal officer, and legal is on that one.
And legal, okay.
Well, legal as requested.
Plain legal.
Okay, as requested.
It is audit.
Right,
Especially and especially.
yes. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. There-
There's none?
Second,
Donaldson?
Donaldson. The motion was made by, I believe, Max, or, okay. So I'll have the roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Okay. Establishment of a full-time labor management committee. And who is
This is-
normally on that?
This says it's to consist of 2 fire board members, the police, and the police chief.
No.
Or fire chief.
Fire chief.
That would be awkward, huh?
Mr. Chairman, that is also for the appointment of the Health Insurance Committee for that. It's the same individuals. Whoever serves on the full-time labor management is also on the Health Insurance Committee.
Okay. Believe this year it was myself and Mr. Gautner. I see no, unless someone else wants to serve on that committee. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to establish that committee with the aforementioned individuals.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Adams?
I'll
Is there-
second it.
Mr. Wayman. Any other discussion? Madam, call the roll, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, the establishment of a part-time labor management committee. Again,
Yeah, that's 2 fire board members and the fire chief.
and it was Mr. Gautner and myself this past year.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Donaldson moved and Mr. Anderson second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, establishment of the finance committee.
Okay, this is to establish the finance committee. This is to discuss bond debt refinancing options, investment opportunities. And the members consist of 2 fire board members, the fire chief, the fiscal officer, and bond counsel, meetings to be scheduled as needed.
And who were the individuals last year?
I think I was, wasn't I? Yeah, I'll do it again.
I'd like Mr. Donaldson to be the second board member, if that's okay. Okay, so Mr. Donaldson, Mr. Anderson. Could I have a motion for those individuals?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Wayman?
I'll second.
Mr. Donaldson? Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes. Okay, a motion to establish board member pay. We all know that I get $3.95 a month. But,
Are you keeping it the same as last year?
yes,
I would move to make the same, continue with last year's rates.
okay. Mr. Donaldson has made the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Okay, all full-time and part-time district firefighters continue at current pay and status per contract. I'm gonna look to Mrs. Dan on that. Are we gonna approve this, or the impact of what we're gonna do at the end of the meeting in the executive session?
Well, you would approve this, and then
And
if
ha-
any change needs to
okay.
be made after any further discussion, then you would go ahead and take
Okay.
that action later.
So all full-time and part-time firefighters will continue at their current pay and status per the contract. Is there a motion?
Yeah, that motion.
Mr. Adams,
I'll second.
Mr. Anderson, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Next item is the establish pay period for various classifications as of January 1st, 2020.
Is that supposed to be 2020?
Is that,
I think that's when they were established, so that date does not change unless we change.
okay, so
Okay.
for the 3-year contract.
Got it?
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Donaldson?
I'll second it.
Mr. Anderson? Is there any discussion regarding this issue? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Next item is continue with the current purchase order procedure. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wayman? Second?
Second.
Mr. Adams? Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Next item, continue the Madison Fire District rules and regulations.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Anderson?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Authorize Chief Baker to negotiate and settle EMS billings.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Anderson? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Adams, any discussion? Chief, do you envision any issues with this as we go forward?
I have the pleasure of reporting that I've not had to negotiate and/or settle any EMS billing issues as of this date.
Hey, that is great.
So you can continue to authorize me to do that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Okay, the next set of motions, a motion to continue the fire chief at his current contractual terms.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wayman, and I'm gonna second that, because we have an excellent fire chief. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Okay, next item, fiscal officer to continue at $12,360 annually.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Adams, any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Next item, reappointment of Stacy Dame as Fire District Legal Counsel.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Adams?
I'll second it.
Mr. Anderson, any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Set the rate for special meeting notification. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Anderson?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman? Discussion.
What was the rate last year?
$10.
$10, okay.
Okay. And who is that paid to?
You guys.
No, this is
No,
if
this is for,
two persons requesting, let's see, set the
Right.
rate
Oh,
of special
so-
notification, two persons requesting. So somebody requests notification.
Has to pay $10, okay. Thank you. See, we learned I learned something at every meeting.
so that's a year's postage and cost of the, okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Any other discussion?
I don't think we've ever requested, we haven't had anybody ask for it, so.
Okay, hey, so we saved $10. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes. Lastly, but not leastly, administrative assistant to continue at $18 per hour.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Anderson,
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Okay, we have made it through that arduous reorganization meeting. We,
Adjourn.
yeah, we're gonna need a motion to adjourn from the reorganizational meeting so that we can start the regular fire district meeting.
I'll
Is-
make-
Max, Mr. Anderson,
Second.
Mr. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Question, okay, so we are adjourned. Question for the legal. At the, we have done at the village on an adjournment, unless it's to go into executive session, by acclamation.
I know that you have done that in the past. I mean, it's up to you as the chairman. I mean, historically, we've done
Okay.
a roll call vote, but
Not a problem.
it's up to you.
That's fine with me. I'm not about to rock the boat. Okay, are we all set to go into our regular meeting? Okay, I will call the regular Madison Fire District meeting to order at 7:15. Roll call, please.
I guess I was not ready, I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
that's
but-
okay.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, here.
Mr. Donaldson?
Here.
Mr. Wayman?
Here.
Okay, could we all rise for pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Gehring of Gehring Insurance is in the audience, and I will recognize Mr. Gehring to give us our insurance presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see everybody again. What we're going to be discussing tonight is the February 1st renewal of the VFIS accident and sickness insurance, as opposed to the property casualty coverage with VFIS that comes up every August 1st. This is the accident sickness tonight. Just briefly to review it, what this coverage is a combination of life insurance coverage and disability coverage, which applies to everybody, including the people sitting in the front of the room tonight. But it has to be on duty, an on-duty situation. With the disability coverage, it always coordinates with workers' comp, but I know there are employees that go out and buy their own disability coverage individually, through Aflac or something like that. And there's no problem with coordination that those people have with their individual coverage. This is always written as two policies, one for the full-time people, one for the part-time employees, and again, the board members fall under the part-time coverage. With the part-timers, there's a special rider we put on the policy for them. It's called a career rider, and those are for those employees that are part-time but average more than 27 hours a week, which obviously can happen in these times. And we want to make sure if they're working 27 hours or more, that doesn't create an issue with workers' compensation. As far as what's happened with the premiums this year, and that was what I sent to Lori and the chief earlier so you could see it. The premium for the full-timers is up this year, up $716, and this is has a direct correlation to the number of full-time employees. The chief fills out a form at the end of every year as to how many, it's a census form, and this particular year, we went up from full-timers went up from 11 to 15. So that's why the premium went up for the full-timers. Conversely, with the part-timers, the premium came down $454 just because when the census was taken, there were fewer part-time employees. So when it all shakes out, because you're paying for both policies, the expiring policy, the total premium was $4,750. This year it's $5,012. So it's a net increase for the same coverage of $262. The other thing that VFIS has recommended for years, that we asked you to continue to do it, just so we don't run into any problems with workers' compensation on this coverage, is that you continue to collect a $1 dues or contribution from each employee. Again, just to make it right with workers' compensation. So in a nutshell, that's what we're here for tonight, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Gehring? Okay, and thank you, Michael.
If I could, Chairman, just a couple other questions on the property casualty side, if I could. Two quick questions to do with station number 2. Chief, as far as that water problem you had down there, is that something we're not going to be presenting a claim on that? Okay.
I apologize for not getting back to you right away. Yeah, we remediated that ourselves.
And that's fine. That's fine. As long as, with water, as long as you know that's been taken care of, that's good. The other question I had was, now that the Station 2 project is underway, could you hazard to guess when the project might be completed?
The contract is March
or only reason I'm bringing this up, Chief, is just because, again, when we need to step in and provide the coverage, which the contractor is providing for you right now, so.
I'm hoping by the end of April.
And you can just keep him updated as to the status.
The snow didn't help this week either.
Well, you know, I do a lot of things with Madison Historical Society. We share the same architect, and I know a lot of the problems that are, a lot of issues that have happened, so it's,
I will definitely keep you posted.
okay,
Hopefully March, but
yeah. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, by the second half of this year, I'm gonna be retiring from the insurance agency. And, just want you to understand that there will be a replacement from the agency, someone who's got years of experience that will take my place. And the other thing is, I will assure you that I'm not gonna retire before the property casualty coverage renews in August. So I'm still gonna be on board with that, and just sort of having the other person come in and get acclimated to everything about Madison Fire District. And I'll still, but again, as I said, with Madison Historical Society, you'll see me around. It'll be just a different building than you're used to, so.
Any other questions for Mr. Gearing?
Okay? No, it's so, is there anything else I should stick around for as far as insurance? I'd be glad to if there's anything else.
no, I don't think we have anything else going tonight, no. And I will keep you posted on Station 2 as we progress
Yeah, okay.
slowly.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Gearing.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item on the agenda are the minutes from the December 15th meeting. You have the minutes before you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Yeah, that motion.
Mr. Adams, is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wayman, is there any discussion, any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are bills and payroll. The bills amount to $45,871.10, and payroll of $272,767.28, or approximately $318,638. Is there a motion to pay the bills and meet our payroll?
Yeah, that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adams.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Wayman.
For the total, it was 38 cents.
I know I said approximately.
Okay, whatever,
Okay.
whatever.
You're keeping me in my right
You
frame of
Mr.
mind,
Chairman.
okay. We have an additional 38 cents total. So, we have a motion on the floor, and there is no discussion. Okay, madam, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to our December 2021 financial report. Madam Financial Officer?
Okay, I'm reading from the fund summary report. And we started the balance with $5,693,116.23. Our month-to-date revenue was $55,933.27. Our year-to-date revenue is $5,434,938.40. Again, our month-to-date expenditures is $318,638.38. Our year-to-date expenditures is $4,229,216.28. So we're starting this year with $5,430,411.12.
Any questions of the fiscal officer? Do I need a motion to approve the? Okay, at this point in time, I'll open up the public portion. If there is anyone that wishes to address the board, if they would identify themselves, state their name and their residence. Is there anyone either online or here? that
Mr.
wishes-
Chairman, we have nothing online.
Okay. And is there anyone here? Okay, so we have no public portion. That brings us to legal counsel. Ms. Dane.
First of all, I want to thank the board for my reappointment. I look forward to working with you again this year. Second, just to provide the board with an update, as you'll recall at the last meeting, there was a hearing in front of the Board of Building Appeals regarding CASC 307. We agreed to kind of stay that matter for 60 days to allow CASC to apply for a variance through the State Fire Marshal's office. A hearing has now been scheduled in front of the Board of Building Appeals in Columbus for January 31st at 2 p.m. Just as of yesterday, the other side was looking to continue that hearing, getting additional time until March. We opposed that because we wanted to keep things moving, and so the hearing is going forward as scheduled, and it's our understanding that a variance application hasn't even been made yet with the State Fire Marshal's office. So I should have something to report at the next meeting regarding the outcome of that, but just wanted to keep the board up to date. So that's all I have.
Okay, any questions of legal counsel? Thank you, Ms. Dane.
Welcome.
Old business, status on Station 2 renovation. Chief?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have a groundbreaking. During the groundbreaking, we had a problem when they dug through the sewer line from the bathrooms at the current station. That was repaired. They also found what appears to be, and I don't know, I wasn't around when the station was built. I'd have to refer to like Mr. Wayman or something.
didn't
But
work on that one.
it appears that maybe they found some of the abandoned leach lines. So there was a few delays in the excavation of the footing as they found things buried in the ground that nobody anticipated. But the footing has been poured, the block has started, the corners are up. They were supposed to come back on Monday to finish the block work. They were there today digging out the foundation so that they could try to resume the block work. But it has started, and as expected, there's a few hiccups along the way.
Okay, any questions of the chief? Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
New business. We have a couple of items in front of us having to do, Resolution 2201. Ms. Dane.
This is a resolution authorizing renewal of the district insurance plan for VFIS accident and sickness insurance coverage as recommended for the upcoming insurance year and authorizing payments for said plan. As Mr. Gehring reviewed the numbers with the board, there is a policy for the full-timers, and that full-time policy is $2,689 in an annual premium, and the part-time policy is $2,323 for a total of $5,012.
Any questions of, no. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Anderson, second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman. Now, is there any discussion or questions regarding this resolution? Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. And that brings us to our next item of the business that we all look forward to. The Chief's report.
Yes, I would like to echo Ms. Dame's comments. I thank the board on retaining me to work with you for another year. For the chief's report, anniversaries, believe it or not, there's nobody that is employed at Madison Fire as a firefighter that was hired in January. So I figured instead of recognizing the people for their anniversaries, I think it's a good time to recognize all of them. Last year, we ran 3,558 calls. It was a 12% increase and was about 330 calls more than we've ever run at the fire department. As you know, I've been preaching about staffing the whole time, so while we had some staffing challenges and we had people working significant overtime, since there's nobody to recognize for their anniversary, I just want to recognize the men and women who have been busting their butts the last year. Unfortunately, this year is not any different. We may even be on a little higher clip. So again, one of the concerns is we're at a bend, almost break point. But when we look at the financials, as Ms. Clapp brought up, our tax revenue was up 8.6% over what we projected from the budget. Our EMS revenue was up 13%. Obviously, we had 300 more calls than normal, so that kind of was a correlation. We still are on the top tier of collections for EMS revenue in the county. Overtime budget, we blew out of the water this year because of staffing, but we did continue to stay about 14% under what was budgeted for the year, and that was because we budget for a full staff, and when we're using minimal staff or we have our minimum staffing, we're saving some dollars there. We did have some COVID that struck the department. We've been very fortunate. I think at one point we've only had 2 people with some overlapping COVID time off. The CDC's recommendation of 5 days now has been significantly helpful. Call volume I brought up, inspections. I think I mentioned before, our inspector suffered an on-duty injury at his full-time job, so those have been delayed somewhat. I want to thank Captain Sopko and Stacy. They're working with CASC 307, and I do think we need to continue to press and not have delays because our concern is it is an imminent danger. It's a hazard to the community. Delaying that only delays making sure folks are safe. Vehicles, everything's been taken care of. The Station 2 project we talked about. The officer meeting that we had this month was focused purely on full-time hires. We do have testing for full-time hires on January 24th. We had 20 outside candidates apply on top of 9 internal. Made me feel kind of good because I believe the city of Mentor or Willoughby, one of the two, only had like 30. I think it was Willoughby maybe had 30, Mentor might have had 50. The fact that we got 29 is pretty good. We did pull a lot of outside candidates from East, which is probably the only place we can compete. You know, we keep losing everybody west. It's time for us to start pulling people from the east. The budget looks good. The budget worksheet's there. There were no big surprises. Again, the overtime was a little high, but our overall staffing came on point. We did have a part-time labor management meeting that we'll discuss later. Lake Health, as some of you guys know, I was literally on the phone just before the meeting. I'm a little disappointed with Lake Health and University Hospital. They gave a press release on the closing. They gave us a date of opening. The press release, or the last release, is now Madison's emergency department is closed indefinitely. They're supposed to reevaluate that again in the middle of February. I was just told tonight that they're certain that diagnostics will come back, because one of the things that does impact our community is if your doctor is there and he orders labs, you can't get labs drawn. If you need x-rays, you can't get x-rays completed. So I did send the letter on behalf of the fire board that you all approved. Mr. Anderson signed it. I was told that we definitely got their attention. I've been in contact with commissioners. I've been in contact with UH folks. I talked to Dino DeSantis today. My own opinion is I think that this needs to stay right on the radar. I don't think that we need to sit quietly. I think that I would encourage us to continue to speak to people so that they know that this is an issue. My concern is if we sit quietly, it goes away. I'm supposed to have a meeting with my liaison and one of the administrators sometime next week. They're gonna look for Friday. When I find a date and time, I'll extend that invitation to any board members that would like to attend, and I'm also gonna extend it to any of the commissioners that would like to attend, so that they can sit down face-to-face with UH administration. I was told this was a Lake Health decision, but now I'm being directed to the UH administration, so something doesn't quite line up. And I talked about the full-time testing. I hope to have candidates at the next board meeting that we can swear in to have them begin March 6th. This will help our part-time staffing so that y'all know we used to have about 40 part-time people that help supplement. We're down to, I believe, 14 currently. So we're doing what we can to recruit any of the candidates that we don't get from the outside in here as a full-time candidate. We're gonna revisit them as part-time employees just to see if we can't build that roster. Other than that, the graphs, the budget stuff is all good. Call volume, again, I think the biggest thing for us is this was a brutal 2021. And going back to the ER, losing that ER increases travel time, and my suspicion of them converting the ER to an urgent care is only going to add volume. When it used to be an urgent care, we went there about 300 times a year. We are not in a position where we can absorb an additional 300 runs a year. Right now, about a third of our calls are overlapping, which means we have nobody here. I think today, or yesterday, I believe it was yesterday when Mr. Gautner and Mr. Lee were here, we had 4 calls going off at one time. We had Perry here, plus 3 of our own squads, so that really meant nobody was left. So, other than that, nursing homes have been a little bit better, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Any questions for the chief?
Yes, I
Mr.
have,
Adams.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Mr. Adams.
I'm impressed by the candidates, the number. that
Yeah, I was
you've,
too.
I guess my question would be, how did this come about, by recruiting, or are they seeing something with our contracts that's enticing these people? Because we haven't seen this in,
Well, this
quite
is,
some
this is the
time.
first time, Madison Fire has never gone outside for full-time hires. This is the
Okay.
first time we've opened it up to the outside. And as I kind of suspected, we have a lot of youth with no experience in those applicants, but we also have a few career people east of us. So the nice part about Madison is we can blow away and compete with Ashtabula County. You know, the city of Conneaut, I think their firefighters make $40,000 a year. So that's comparable to the folks that we've lost that have gone to Mentor and Willoughby and Westlake. So this is just the first opportunity that we've taken to really try to recruit, open up to recruit, and what's happened is, you know, we're the big dog when you look east.
yeah, on the east side, yes.
And probably out of the 20 external candidates, I think 18 of them were that way. The other 2 were south, which is fine.
That's impressive. I didn't know if you guys were out there recruiting or what you were doing. You know, we just had our police test in city of Paynesville. We had 4.
Well, that is law
Candidates.
enforcement.
So, exactly, hey, I got in the wrong line, I admit that, but, you know, and we've been recruiting also, we've been talking about this the last couple of years, so I just didn't know if you guys tried something new or what it was.
No, I think this-
We've also been going east,
Yeah.
too, so,
And this is the first time we really opened it up to the outside, and this, the other thought of opening it up to the outside is now we have names.
right.
So if none of those outside candidates end up ultimately being hired, we'll reach out to each of them individually to see if they're interested in a part-time job.
Very good. Very good, thank you.
Hey, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Hey, you
But
tried
it's
something.
time
You tried.
well spent.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, chief.
Yes, sir.
Once again, outstanding report. Okay, next item. Is there any public comments prior to our close of the meeting?
Nothing from outside.
Okay, any closing board comments. Okay, I would like to ask the board for a resolution commending Mark Vest for his years of service with the fire board, and, you know, his duties toward the Madison communities. I mean, he's always, you know, talked about not only the village and the township, but he's been very vocal on the fire district. And I, for one, you know, we got a good replacement here, but I'd like to ask the board to allow Ms. Dane to prepare some sort of a resolution for Mr. Vest. If I can have a motion.
Yeah, you have that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wayman. Roll call, or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes. Okay, thank you, board. And now I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session for the discussion of collective bargaining, personnel, and employment.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
1945.
No. 7:43.
Oh.
Which clock is more correct?
Probably my iOS Apple
Okay.
product.
Thanks, chief.
That one, somebody just probably turns.
Okay. Blame it on the firefighters again.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me in executive session?
I'm sorry?
Todd,
Sure.
I know the answer.
Yes.
Ms. Dame already told me.
Of course you know the answer.
Right. Joanne?
So February 16th is the next one.
you don't fall on your shoelaces.
At 8:08. We have an item to come before the board relating to the part-time firefighters. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Indicate what it is, or?
Yes, it has to do with, yeah, Stacy, you can,
Good idea.
Gladly.
Good idea.
This would be a motion to authorize legal counsel to prepare an agreement with the part-time collective bargaining agreement for the next payroll to take effect and increase to $18, $20, and $22.50 as the hourly rate. And also authorizing the chairman to sign that agreement once it's signed by the part-time representatives.
okay. Do we have a motion?
I made that motion.
Mr. Anderson, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Wayman, is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Is there any other issues to come before the board? And I'll ask for a motion to,
Before you guys adjourn, I just want, on behalf of the Madison Firefighters Organization, I do want to thank you guys, Mr. Gautner and Mr. Lee, for your time to meet with us, and as well as Chief Baker. We greatly appreciate it. The collective group of everyone is very thankful for what you guys have done, and we're glad to have your guys' support. We're going to keep trucking along and hopefully get some people in the door and keep things going, but we greatly appreciate it, so thank you guys.
Welcome.
okay, sir, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, anything else? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wayman, Mr. Adams. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wayman?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, meeting adjourned at
Good to
8:10.
have you back.
Good meeting.
Yep.
Good meeting, everybody.
Yes.
Okay, take care, Max. Keep
Okay,
flying,
so
Todd.
do we have a tentative?
All righty.
Oh.
His meeting is, and then,
Okay, yes.
when you guys have the meeting, let's try to set
But
up
at
a
least
time
maybe
when
we
you
can
guys
like
get that.
get everything.
Okay,
You think we need a resolution for village council for the emergency room issue?
I think that would be an excellent idea. Yeah.
Maybe talk, trustees are gone already.
Yeah.
But maybe we need, a letter from the mayor, a letter from council.
Sure.
So it's
No, no.
easier. I'll go take
That's an, yeah, that's an excellent idea. And, hey, Chief, oh, yeah, yeah.
We'll have to ask him. You can ask him again.
Can I forward your letter to council? Because we would like to do something with regard to the
Or maybe have you take a look at it before we send one.
Yeah.
We're just wondering if a resolution from council and a resolution from the trustees, and maybe a letter from the mayor for the ER.
I will, I'll forward you guys, I'll just forward you guys both the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right, did I send it to you too, or not? I don't remember.
All I have is that.
Okay, were you able to get into that? I will, yeah, I'll email you that letter that was sent on behalf of the board.
Carol?
came into Lake Health, they're like, oh, everything's gonna be okay.
Right,
You know, we're
right.
not gonna change anything.
So I'm gonna give them, like I told him, he's gonna be here next week. If they're here next week and we have a meeting, that's great, and then
Hey,
we'll give
whoa.
them another week and see what's
Whoa, whoa,
going
whoa.
on.
Our TV screens. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Oh, well.
You know what, the nice part is the mics are muted though, so that's a
Yeah.
good thing.